Most people think this is a list of old factory foods. It's not. This is what happens when you feed people just enough to keep them working, but never enough to make them strong. Some workers ate bread and tea every single day. Not once in a while. Every day. Others ate meat that wasn't really meat anymore. Stretched, reused, filled with things that didn't belong there. And some were eating things that didn't just fill them. They slowly damaged their bodies without them even realizing it. That's where this stops being about food. Because this wasn't just survival. It was a system. One that kept people tired, predictable, and easy to replace. And once you see what they were actually eating, you don't just feel bad for them. You start asking something uncomfortable. Were they just poor? Or were they being kept that way? This is not about food. It's about what food does to people when it's controlled. Factory workers didn't just work long hours. They lived inside a system that quietly decided how much energy they were allowed to have. And food was the easiest way to control that. Give someone too little, and they collapse. Give them too much, and they start thinking, questioning, resisting. So the system found a middle point, just enough to keep the body moving, but never enough to build strength or independence. And over time, something shifts. Hunger stops feeling urgent. Weakness starts to feel normal. You stop expecting more because you've never experienced more. That's the part people miss. This wasn't random survival. It was structured, quiet, efficient, repeated every single day. And once you understand that, you stop looking at these meals as food and start seeing them for what they really were. Limits. So the real question becomes, what does just enough actually look like when your body is being pushed every single day? Bread, tea, potatoes, oatmeal. Nothing shocking. In fact, it sounds simple, even healthy. Bread gives quick energy. Tea fills the stomach. Potatoes keep you moving. Oatmeal makes you feel full for a while. On paper, it works, but this isn't about one meal. It's about repetition. You eat, and you feel okay for an hour. Then the drop comes. Slow, heavy. Your body asks for more, but nothing changes. So you keep working on less. Day after day. No real protein. No real recovery. No real strength building. Just enough to move. Never enough to grow. And the worst part? It never changed. No variety. No improvement. No break from it. At first, it feels manageable. But when nothing changes, your body starts changing instead. This isn't starvation. It's slower than that. You don't collapse. You fade. And once the quality drops, everything starts to shift. This is where it changes. Meat scraps, cheap sausages, molasses-heavy foods, stale leftovers, oversalted meals. It's still food. But now it's different. Meat wasn't always fresh. Sometimes it was reused. Sometimes it was stretched with fillers just to make it last longer. Sausages looked solid, but inside, it wasn't what you'd expect. Molasses made things taste better, but it hid how little real nutrition was there. Salt preserved food, but it also drained you slowly. Leftovers weren't thrown away. They were served again, and your body feels it. Digestion gets heavier. Energy becomes unstable. You feel full, but not satisfied. Something is off, but you don't stop, because you can't. And that's where the line starts to blur. This isn't just about eating anymore. Something else is happening. At this point, you have to ask, was this just bad food? Or was it efficient food? Because from a system's point of view, it worked. It was cheap, it lasted longer, and it kept workers moving. That's all that mattered. Not strength, not long-term health, not recovery, just output. And here's the deeper problem. When your body is tired, you don't question things. When your energy is low, you don't resist. You adapt. You accept. And slowly, your standards drop. Not because you chose to, but because you didn't have the energy to choose anything else. So the food didn't just feed them. It shaped how much they could push back. And once that happens, the damage doesn't stay physical. Now it gets heavier. Lard-heavy meals, coffee substitutes, contaminated liquids, rotten produce, food mixed with fillers. At this point, it's not about quality. It's about stretching survival. Lard added calories, but too much of it made the body sluggish, slow. Coffee wasn't always coffee. Sometimes it was burnt grains just to imitate the effect. Water sources weren't always clean. And when food depends on that, everything changes. Produce wasn't always fresh. Rotten parts were cut away. The rest was still used. And fillers? They made food look bigger, but gave almost nothing back. Your body keeps adjusting. You stop noticing the difference because this becomes your normal. Energy feels dull. Thinking feels slower. But you keep going because stopping isn't an option. And this is where something shifts. The line between food and fuel disappears. At this point, it's not about hunger anymore. It's about control. And one final example shows that better than anything else. Sometimes the most powerful thing wasn't what they ate. It's what they didn't. Meals skipped. Portions cut smaller. Days where just enough quietly became less. No warning. No explanation. Just less food for the same work. And the body notices. Strength drops. Focus slips. Recovery disappears. But the system doesn't stop, because even then, people kept going. That's the hardest part to understand. Not that the food was bad, but that it was enough to keep them from quitting. And when you reach that point, you're not just tired, you're reduced. So this wasn't just about harsh working conditions. It was deeper than that. These workers weren't just underpaid. They were underfed in a way that kept everything running. Not starving, not strong, just existing in the middle. And that middle is powerful because it keeps people functional, but limits how far they can go. Food shaped their energy, their thinking, their ability to push back. And over time, that becomes their reality. Not because it's right, but because it's consistent. Now here's the uncomfortable part. This didn't disappear. It just changed form. Today, food is faster, cheaper, easier, but the question is still the same. Is it building you, or just keeping you going? Because what you eat still affects how much energy you have, how clearly you think, how much you question your situation. And most people never stop to ask that. They just eat and move on, just like before. So next time you sit down for a meal, ask yourself one thing. Is this actually feeding you? Or is it just enough to keep you in the system?